only do we not feel like writing, not only are we not in the mood, but we're also really annoyed with ourselves for being in that state. These two exercises are really going to give you some great tools so that you can deal with resistance. So I want to get you thinking about resistance as a self-defense mechanism, okay? And this can be really useful when we start to get into a pattern of resisting resistance, and that can happen a lot. So if we come back to the idea of resistance as a self-defense mechanism, I want you to imagine there's a fire in front of me, okay? And the resistance is myself stopping myself from going into the fire. Self-defense. So what has started to happen is your mind has pictured something about your writing that could potentially lead to death. And when I talk about death and when I talk about the mind, death can be social exclusion, death can be rejection, death can be failure. So essentially the mind is resisting that fire, is resisting that act of writing because it's calculated that that act is going to lead to an outcome that it wants to protect you from. Okay. If I then start to get annoyed with myself because I'm not leaping into the fire, what then starts to happen is my self-defense mechanism thinks, oh my God, this woman is crazy. She's trying to override me and leap into the fire. Like, I now need to defend her from herself. So it's not going to give up. It's only going to defend harder. It's going to fight against you because it's going to start thinking that you're an absolute lunatic for wanting to throw yourself into that fire. So we want to find a way to step back. How do we do that? Often one of the reasons that we resist resistance is because we're scared. We've got this desire to write and we're like, I really want to be a writer. Like, this is my total dream. I don't understand why I'm not getting around to it. And so we can get scared because we can think, maybe I'm not meant to be a writer. Maybe that means I'm not any good. And so resistance can be a fearful thing to experience. So one of the first places to begin to approach resistance is to take your desire to write as an absolute given. It's absolute proof. Whether you're writing that day or not, if you have a dream to write, there's a reason. And if you have a dream to write, there's a reason. And the reason is that you have this creative spirit within you. We just need to work a little bit with it. What we're going to do, the first exercise, is essentially working out a way to take that fire and shift it into something that we don't need to protect ourselves from. So we want to make sure that what we're imagining as the result of our writing is something really beautiful, something that we don't need to use our self-defense mechanism to stop ourselves stepping into. So the first exercise is that I want you to spend 2 minutes describing your writing in exactly the way that you want it to be. So both the content that you're writing and the act of you writing it. So I want you to describe the content of your writing, the act of you writing it, in exactly the way that you want it to be. 2 minutes, off you go. Okay, there we go, 2 minutes. So how did you get on with that one? How did you describe your writing, the content of your writing and the act of your writing? So for me, I started off describing the content of my writing as being informative and also taking people into new worlds. And I put that when I'm in the act of writing, I feel comfortable. So remember, we're coming back to those senses. I know that I'm going to feel in this specific way when I'm writing. So essentially, if I know that I'm going to feel comfortable, why am I going to resist that? There's no need for self-defense. If I imagine that I'm going to feel conflicted and I'm going to hate myself, that self-defense is going to go up. So I'm saying to myself, when I'm writing, I'm going to feel comfortable, and I know that the content that I'm writing is going to be informative. So I'm really inviting myself into this place. I know that I only have to write for as long as I want, and afterwards I can reward myself with something that I enjoy doing. So again, if we have this experience of chaining ourselves to the chair and saying, no, you're not leaving the desk until you've written 2,000 words, even if that takes you all day, is that going to be a place that you're really trying to get back to the following day? These are the reasons that we experience resistance to our writing, because we've made it something unpleasant. We haven't just taken that moment to say, how can we make this as inviting as possible, so that we start to really draw ourselves into the act and we start to really look forward to doing it. So I know that I only have to write for as long as I want. So again, I have a very specific writing practice in place. I wake up very early in the morning at about 5 o'clock, and I get the work that I do on my longer books, my novel, my memoir, I get that done in the first hour of the day. And so for me, I know that it's done then. I know that I've written between 500 and 1,000 words, and I sort of walk around the rest of the day going, yeah, got that done. And then I spend 15-minute bursts creating all of my content. So I only have to sit down for 15 minutes. I know that I can write 1 page in this notebook in 15 minutes. And for me, that's a blog post, it's a YouTube video. So I always know that I don't have to sit down for any longer than that. So 15 minutes is that place, that length that I know is completely manageable and enjoyable. Plus, I know that when I've done that 15 minutes, I can then reward myself. I can get outside, which is one of the things that I love doing the most. I can take my dog out for a walk. I can put some music on. I can dance. I can read. So I have all of the lovely things in place that I can then reward myself with. So for me, that resistance has been totally diminished because I know that there isn't really anything to be resisting. I put here, I know my content always improves with each edit. And for me, that's really important because yes, sometimes I write a page and as I'm writing it, there's this little voice in the back of my mind going, this isn't quite it. You're not quite saying what it is that you want to say. But I know that having written that and taken time off and come back to do another edit, I know that it's guaranteed to improve. So again, any of that resistance that I used to feel, which is, oh God, sometimes I don't quite manage to say it the way that I want, I've got this other little voice that pops up that says, yeah, but remember, with every edit that you do, your writing always improves. So again, that makes me quite keen to get that first draft down because then I can start progressing into that place where I'm improving it. I also put insights come in between my writing stints. So again, for me, it's really important to remind myself that because yes, I used to be years and years ago, I'd be in that place where I would make myself sit down for about 4 hours and I would force myself to write a draft and then keep working at it, trying to make it better. And I quickly learned that actually that was not the way that I worked. For me, it's write down everything that I want to write down in that first draft, get it down nice and quick, 15 minutes, just get it done, and then go off, take a break, get some fresh air, get some perspective, and that's when the insights come. And then I can come back for another 15 minutes and get that second draft done. what I want to look at now is what I touched on earlier. We've got this idea, yes, we don't want to stop ourselves coming into our writing, so we want to make sure that our writing is not a flaming furnace. But we also want to check ourselves when we're in that place of resisting resistance. And I know that place. I want always to find a dance with it. So I am very clear about how my writing practice is. I'm very clear about how I manage my writing time. That's not to say that there aren't times where sometimes I've got this, like I said, that energetic, oh, I just feel a bit tired. I just feel like I've got nothing to say. I feel like I've said everything. I feel like I've written every word there is to write. So for me, when I experience that resistance, it's about the next part of the practice, which is, okay, am I beginning to resist this? So I want to look at that because, as you know, when I was describing earlier, if you start to resist the resistance is only going to work harder because it's going to say, stop resisting me. I'm trying to save your life here. Are you mad? Are you insane? We're not going into that fire. So when that resistance pops up, we want to understand, okay, it's here because it's protecting me from something. So I want to have a different relationship with the resistance rather than struggling against it. So the next prompt that I'm going to give you for the 2 minutes of writing is looking at how you want to behave when you feel resistance. How do you want to behave when you feel that resistance? So what do you want to think, feel, and do? And also you might even begin to explore what kind of conversation you have with resistance. So the prompt is, how do you want to behave when you feel resistance? What do you want to think? What do you want to feel? What do you want to do? And even what kind of conversation might you have with resistance when you're feeling it? 2 minutes, off you go. Okay. So how was that one? We're redefining the relationship that we have with resistance. How do you want to behave when you feel it? How do you want to feel? What do you want to be thinking? What do you want to be doing? And potentially, how do you want to be talking with resistance? So I put, when I feel resistance, I want to soften immediately. And actually, I didn't write this down, but in my mind, I had an image of the fire and sort of me just collapsing and falling into resistance's arms. And then I put, this will show that I have full trust in it. And I was like, oh, this is an intriguing place that I'm going. And then in this place, I imagined resistance saying to me, finally, you're listening to me. Did you realize that your expectations have shot up right now and you're putting way too much pressure on yourself? And I thought, oh, resistance is there to pretty much save me from the pressure and the expectations that I put on myself. This is a habit I have. I know that it's there, and I'm always reminding myself to step back from that huge pressure that I do put on myself. So I thought, lovely, by softening and having this nice little conversation with resistance, I'm able to remind myself that all I am trying to do is find one writer to inspire. And I realized, in this moment, I could probably start with myself. And I could really feel that sense of shift from that whole recreation of the relationship. I feel the resistance. Rather than resisting, I soften, I surrender, I fall into resistance's arms, and resistance says, oh, thank God you're finally listening. Listen, I'm here to say you're in a place where you've put so much pressure on yourself. Ease up. And then I'm like, oh yeah, thanks for reminding me. I really appreciate that. So do you see that when we start to shift our relationship with resistance, we're no longer resisting it, we're no longer thinking, I wish you weren't there, we're actually beginning to listen to it, and we begin to discover that resistance is there to help us find that soft, that easier way forward. And when we stop fighting it, we finally have that chance to come to the page in the way that we want, to come to the page and fulfill those dreams, those goals that we know that we're beginning to work on and step by step make our way towards. I want you to think today, what has your most surprising insight been? And finally, I want to finish up with recommending this book here. You can see with all the little post-it notes how much I absolutely adore this book. Stephen Pressfield's work, he deals so much with resistance. And the lovely thing about this book is the chapters are sometimes even just half a page long. So it's a lovely little companion to have as you go about day by day, really creating that writer's life. So lovely to do this work with resistance. What are you resisting? And looking forward to seeing you in the next video.